Hello, lovelies. Happy Wellness Wisdom Wednesday. I'm Donya Fahmy, and I am the Alchemist in Chief for Sustainable Health Solutions, Inc. and Dropwise Essentials. I'm also known as a natural health expert and lifestyle transformation facilitator. And you know what? Summer is finally here. Yay! And so I feel like the time is right to talk about practicing smart and sensible sun safety, not just for your skin, but for your overall health. So today I am going to bust some myths and shed some light on the real problem with sunscreens, okay? And just share some additional tips and wisdom with you on other ways that you can practice sun safety where you don't have to put yourself in a position of risk by applying chemical sunscreens. So, by the way, please share this post or tag someone you know, anyone you know that might benefit from that. And yeah, let's get started. So here's the deal. Like mainstream media, especially women's magazines, beauty magazines, dermatologists, and even some medical doctors, they all want you to believe that you cannot step outside of your house without slathering sunscreen all over your body to protect yourself from the risk of skin cancer. And it's gotten so out of hand that there's even some people that have gone as far as to suggest that you should wear sunscreen inside your home because some of the sun's rays are getting through the glass panes in your window. And I think that is just total insanity. And here's why. Because there's no hard scientific evidence one way or the other, right? There's no hard scientific evidence that proves that you can protect yourself from the sun, from skin cancer, using sunscreens. And there's no evidence to prove that if you don't use sunscreen, that your risk of skin cancer is a lot higher. Okay, so that's the deal. I just feel that, all this, even in the medical community now, there's some consensus that all this anti-sun rhetoric is really kind of overstated. And given how much we've learned over the last decade or so about the hazards of chemical sunscreens, about the difference in the different types of ultraviolet radiation, UVA and UVB, they're two types that come from the sun, and also the role of naturally occurring vitamin D in reducing our risk for certain types of cancer and supporting us in dealing with lots of different health issues. So I've actually researched and blogged extensively about sunscreen, sun safety, and skin cancer in the past. And so I take a kind of a counterintuitive position, if you will, and some people might even call it controversial. I don't know. But I have to say, you have to ask yourself, why aren't more people out there talking about the benefits? Hey, Lolita, nice to see you. Why aren't more people out there talking about the benefits of the sun, natural benefits of the sun, and the importance of finding a balance between getting enough exposure and protecting yourself from, risk? So instead, people are out there making the sun out to be something that you should fear. And the cynic in me will say, well, there's really no money to be made in telling people or encouraging people to get out in the sun and get some sunshine, right? But there is a ton of money to be made by scaring you into thinking you should wear sunscreen as your second skin, right? And, let's face it, the companies that make sunscreen products, they rely on perpetuating this fear as a way of guaranteeing their future prosperity and profitability, right? It's their livelihood at stake. So everybody's I'm not a big conspiracy theorist or conspiracy type theory. So I don't think it's a deliberate conspiracy. I just think it's a collusion of factors that are creating this or perpetuating this hype. So here's the deal. There's some important things you may not be aware of, but that you need to know about the risks of using chemical sunscreens, especially if you use them every day or frequently. I feel like you really need to have all the details and all the facts in order to make an informed decision about whether to use sunscreen or not at all. And if you do, when and how much. And so that's part of why I want to do this session today. So who's with me on this? Are you ready to learn some more facts about the risks of sunscreen chemicals? Let me hear from you in the comments below. So you see, the truth is that your risk for sun damage, over the long haul is a result of a number of different factors. So your skin type obviously plays a role. Genetics plays a role. Oh, hey, Mary, nice to see you. And where you live plays a role, right? So your altitude and latitude. So if you live in a higher altitude, like in the mountains, for example, you're going to be exposed, a lot more direct exposure to the sun and the sun's ultraviolet rays, even when it's not particularly sunny out. Like if it's cloudy, you can still get a sunburn, if you're up in the higher altitude. So you are more exposed at higher levels than you are, say, for example, at sea level. That plays a factor. And take note of this. Here's something that also plays a factor. It's the important part is what time of day the time of the day you're out in the sun and the length of the exposure. And here is an interesting fact, which is the biggest predictor of all of your risk for skin cancer is how often and how much you were sunburnt as a child or a young adult. So if you got sunburnt a lot when you were younger, your risk for skin cancer is a lot higher. However, the chemical sunscreens you use may not be providing you with adequate protection that you're being led to believe that it does. So here's the thing. The risk of sun damage and skin cancer revolves all about our exposure to the ultraviolet rays from the sun. And there are two types. There's UVA, stands for ultraviolet, UVA and UVB. And a UVB is, there's still some debate over which of those two are the most harmful, but UVB is the radiation that causes sunburn and traditionally was originally believed to be the main cause of skin cancer. But now there's new information that is leading a lot of people to believe that it's actually UVA that causes longer term damage to the skin and plays a greater role in skin cancer than originally thought. But here's the rub. The UVB rays are the rays, it's the way our body takes the solar energy and utilizes it to create natural occurring vitamin D in our bodies, right? So we absorb the sun and we convert it into vitamin D. And vitamin D has now been shown to be a vital nutrient in helping us. We need it to help protect us against a variety of diseases, everything from diabetes to high blood pressure to rheumatoid arthritis and certain types of cancer like colon and breast cancer and prostate. And so studies are suggesting that you need at least 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D a day in order to cut your risk in half for those types of cancers that I just mentioned, the breast, colon, and prostate. And, truth be told, without some exposure to the sun, it's really hard to get that level of vitamin and maintain that level of vitamin D just through diet and supplementation alone. And so the other thing is, this is an interesting little tidbit, which is that because sunscreen block our ability to convert sunlight into vitamin D, even if you use an SPF rated as low as 15, which for a lot of people I think probably seems like it's very low, and I'm going to talk about SPFs in a moment here, it can actually cut your body's ability to make vitamin D by 95%. So it doesn't take a whole lot of sunscreen to stop you from being able to use the sun to your advantage, your benefit. So that's the rub. Number one is that most people don't realize that sunscreens block your ability to utilize the sun for health benefits, which is to create vitamin D in the body. Number two, most widely used sunscreens have been found to be carcinogenic. Wow, imagine that. So on top of, some of those ingredients, I'm just going to mention a few because there's quite a lot of them, but the more commonly used ones are avobenzone, octinoxate, names, octocrylene, oxybenzone, and patamate-O. And all of these, by the way, are FDA-approved ingredients. They're all been found to be carcinogenic, and here's why. It helps to understand how sunscreens actually work to see where the carcinogenicity comes into play. I don't even know if that's a word. So the way chemical sunscreens typically work is they absorb the ultraviolet UVB rays, and then they disperse that solar energy through a series of chemical reactions, right? Without getting too geeky here into the science of it, this is kind of just how it works. And so in the process of those chemical reactions, they create something called ROS, which is reactive oxygen species. And that's really just another name for what we have commonly come to call free radicals. And most of us know that free radicals is one of the things that leads us to cancer of one type or another. So they create free radicals, and because free radicals lead to cancer, that's what makes the sunscreen carcinogenic. But here's another little tidbit. Apparently, the sunscreen, in the process of having these reactions, the sunscreens themselves degrade pretty quickly when they're in the sunlight because they're constantly absorbing the rays and reacting. And so they actually break down really fast, and that radically reduces their effectiveness. Okay, so that's another little interesting tidbit that I wanted to share. And then to add insult to injury, many of these commonly used sunscreens have been also found to have estrogenic effects, meaning they're endocrine disruptors. So like many of the tens of thousands of chemicals that are in your personal care and skincare products that have been identified as endocrine disruptors, you can add this, list of commonly used sunscreens to the list. So I don't know, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that rubbing a product into your skin that is potentially carcinogenic, known to be carcinogenic, and at the same time, it prevents you from being able to create a vital nutrient that actually helps lower your risk for cancer, do you think that's actually going to be better for you or worse? I'm just curious. Let me hear from you in the comments below if you were aware of this about sunscreen. And after hearing this, do you still believe that using sunscreens actually keeps you safer? So let's talk about, here's the thing. It's quite possible that and the other thing I want to mention is that while all this hype is constantly being perpetuated in the media and in the medical community about, don't leave your house without sunscreen, the actual rates of skin cancer here in the United States have been rising constantly, been rising and continue to rise at alarmingly high rates. So that's why I feel like it's really important to bring some attention or shed some light and, forgive the pun on this subject right now. Because there's a lot of things, it feels like there's more to it than meets the eye. Now, it's quite possible that the increase in skin cancer rates has something to do with common misconceptions people have about SPFs, which is that people feel like if they're using on SPF, a higher rated SPF, that it actually allows them to increase the amount of time they can spend in the sun and keeps them from preventing common sense practice about the amount of prolonged exposure, right? So let's talk about some of the common misconceptions. Most people think that if you step up, for example, from an SPF of 15 that to 30, for example, that you're actually doubling your protection. You're doubling your protection and the amount of time you can spend in the sun without reapplying sunscreen, and that you'll be safe. But here's the thing, the way that the SPF values are calculated, the increase in protection that you get from jumping from an SPF 15 to an SPF 30 is actually only 4%, okay? And no SPF can absorb 100% of the sun's rays. So I say don't even bother with an SPF more than 30 because the amount of protection you get is going to be so minuscule, less than 1%, that it's not even worth it, right? And then the other thing is I think I just mentioned that some studies showed that if you use an SPF as low as a 15, that actually knocks your body's ability to produce vitamin D by 95%. So just keep those things in mind. I think it's an important thing to know. And there's also some concern that the lab testing methods that are used to calculate the SPF values are not necessarily consistent or reliable based on the vagaries of usage and actual sunlight. The conditions, the actual conditions created by sunlight. So given that we know that SPFs are not necessarily always the most reliable thing, I think it gives you one more reason not to rely on sunscreen to protect yourself from the sun. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can. Now, I get it that for some of you who are fair-skinned, if you've had skin cancer and you've overcome it, or you have a history of skin cancer in your family, that you're overly cautious and you want to do everything possible to protect yourself. But given what I've just shared about the carcinogenic nature of chemical sunscreens, I think it'd be in your best interest to really practice other alternative methods of sun safety. So I'm going to talk about some of those right now. So for one thing, on the plus side, you can choose to use a physical sunblock instead of a chemical sunscreen, right? And then, so the sunblocks are typically made of titanium dioxide and zinc oxide, which are naturally occurring minerals. And they, of course, as you probably know, they come in sort of a greasy white paste that it sits on the surface of your skin. It doesn't get absorbed in. And what it does is it reflects the radiation away. Right? So it protects you in that way. There's no danger or harm of reactivity, of free radicals being generated, or any of the sort of toxic nature of the product being absorbed into the skin. So that's why it's a preferable method, and it will stay on there unless it's like accidentally rubbed off, or if you jump in the water, for example, and it gets washed off. Now, one word of caution about the sunblocks: be very cautious and suspicious of sunblock products that are made with nanoparticles or micronization. And that's just a way of making the minerals like so minuscule that they can actually get into the skin so that you don't have that white pasty look when you put it on. But there is not a lot of safety testing that's been done on that, and there is some evidence to show that nanoparticles are toxic to human tissue. So just be aware of that. Okay, that's another thing I want people to know. And listen, if you are not headed to the beach, for example, or the pool, or you're not intending to jump in the water, then you can simply protect yourself by wearing lightweight, longer sleeves and pants. Wear sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat, and there's all kind of common sense things you can do that don't require you to slather nasty chemicals on your skin. And now there's a number of clothing companies that make clothes that are treated. The fabric is actually treated with some kind of SPF, which to me is a much better solution than actually rubbing the stuff into your skin. So that's another option. And then the other thing is to avoid direct sunlight as much as possible during the hottest times of the day. The peak time of sun exposure, like where the sun exposure is the harshest, is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And if you're in a higher altitude, whether you live there or you're vacationing in the mountains or whatnot, just be aware that you're being a lot more exposed. Hi, Leslie. Nice to see you. And just stay in the shade, or wear the protective clothing if you're up in the high altitudes, and especially during peak times. Now, if you have to use sunscreen, again, remember I said my position on this is a little counterintuitive and controversial, but I realize that some people just feel like they need to do that. I recommend you consult the Environmental Working Group sunscreen guide to find products that are like the least noxious that you can use to get the protection you need without exposing yourself to other health issues. And so I'll post a link, by the way, in the comments below when I'm done directly to the guide there. And also, if you'd like to grab a copy of my tip sheet, the top 12 toxic personal care ingredients you should stop using right now. This is kind of what it looks like. Type the word sunscreen in the comments below, and I'll reach out to you personally with a link on how you can get your copy of that. That is a more broader tip sheet. It has the top 12. It does list a few of these sunscreen ingredients that I mentioned, but it also lists a lot of other very widely used ingredients in personal care products that are harmful for you. And so, I highly recommend you grab that and then just kind of keep that handy. It's your little cheat sheet. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. I would call it the elephant in the room, which is your diet. Because your diet actually does have an effect on your skin. And it has an effect on your skin's sort of resilience, its ability to resist and repair sun damage or skin damage from the sun, right? So eating the right kind of foods can play a big role in not just how your skin looks and feels, but how resilient it is. And the deal with that is you want to have a lot of healthy omega-3 fatty acids that you want to put in. So things that you get from avocados, for example, nuts, olive oil, and wild-caught cold water fish like salmon and halibut. These essential fatty acids will keep your skin cell membranes strong and supple, while eating trans fats, like a lot of the hydrogenated oils you'll find in packaged foods, is going to actually, those oils are unstable, and so they also break down under sun exposure into free radicals and reactive oxygen species, right? So that's another little tidbit that I think most people are not aware of. Antioxidants, add them to your diet, either leafy greens and berries, or even take them as supplements, because they obviously can counteract and fight free radicals. And so for maximum benefits, you want to make sure you replace your unhealthy oils with healthier fats, and then add a good dose of antioxidants into your daily regimen, whichever way works for you. And stay tuned, because I'm going to be doing another live session in the coming weeks about how to protect your skin from the inside out. And I'm going to share some specific foods that you can eat that will actually help you do that. Equally important to the oils that you put in your mouth, that you ingest, are the oils that you put on your skin. So make sure you use organic plant-based oils, like virgin coconut oil is a great one. jojoba, if you're not familiar with that, Jojoba, jojoba oil, olive oil, oils that are high, rich in antioxidant vitamins like vitamins E and vitamin C are all really good for you. And by the way, jojoba and coconut oil, as it turns out, have a natural SPF of 8. Okay, so you're already getting a good amount of protection from that. Don't rely on that if you're fair skinned and you can't be out in the sun. You still have to practice common sense safety when you're doing that. But the research has shown that vitamin E and vitamin C can be very protective. First, they fight free radicals. They're protective of the skin. And actually, vitamin C can repair skin damage when it's applied topically. Obviously, it'd have to be in higher amounts. But anything that you use that's naturally high in those vitamins is going to be really healthy for your skin and support your skin in holding up there, so you don't have to slather on all that sunscreen. Hopefully you're not going to put any on, but if you do, then you can kind of really cut back on that and just play around with that. Now, one more tip about what not to do when you go out in the sun, which is do not apply citrus essential oils directly to your skin and then go out in the sun, because some citrus oils are phototoxic, so it can actually kind of accelerate your chances of getting burned. So if you're using a product with essential oils in it, you don't want to put that on if you know you're going to be going out directly in the sun. I don't think that leaving your house and just walking around when it's sunny out is a risk. So that's not a situation in which it would apply. It's really more like if you're going to be outdoors, exposed to the sun for extensive period of time. And then last but not least, remember to drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. So hydration also helps with keeping your skin supple and elastic. And remember to make the sun your ally, not your enemy. Sun is your friend. if you get it in moderation. So sun exposure in moderation does offer health benefits. It provides us with a natural high, right? Because it stimulates the release of feel-good substances in our body like serotonin, dopamine, and beta endorphins. And sunshine also suppresses melatonin, right? So melatonin gets released at night to help us go to sleep. And then the sunlight suppresses that. So because if you have melatonin exposure in the daylight, it makes you tired and kind of sluggish. So the sunlight kind of helps you with that. And of course, it's your best source for naturally occurring vitamin D. Now, I hope you found this information helpful. Like I said, I'll post the link for the sunscreen guide in the comments after I'm done here. And then again, if you'd like to get a copy of my tip sheet, top 12 toxic personal care ingredients to avoid right now, just type the word sunscreen in the comments and I'll reach out to you later with a link on how to get that. Okay, so let's recap quickly what we covered today. First, I talked about all the different dangers of chemical sunscreens. Many of them people are mostly not aware of. One of the key ones is that it blocks your body's ability to use the sun to create naturally occurring vitamin D, which has been identified as a key nutrient in helping us fight a variety of diseases and really lowering our risk for colon, prostate, and breast cancer. The other problems with sunscreen is they are mostly carcinogenic, and that has to do with the way they actually work and how they react with the ultraviolet B radiation and create a series of chemical reactions, and in the chemical reactions creates free radicals. And free radicals, as we know, often leads to cancer or makes us more susceptible to cancer. And the other trick is that because they're so volatile, because of the chemical reactions, they actually deteriorate really quickly. So you could apply a sunscreen and it would lose its effectiveness quite fast, and you wouldn't even realize that you weren't really being protected anymore. So those are like the three main issues with ultraviolet rays, with the chemical sunscreen and ultraviolet rays. And then also to add insult to injury, some of these sunscreens have been found to be endocrine disruptors. So basically they're just really not good for you. And so if you can avoid them in any way, shape, or form, that would be my recommendation to you. We also talked about some of the common misconceptions around SPF values and how stepping up, for example, from a 15 to a 30 doesn't double your protection or give you the ability to spend twice as much time in the sun. It actually only increases your protection by 4%. And I believe when you're at 30, you're already at like 96% protection, which means anything above 30 is going to give you such a tiny incremental bump up in protection that's probably not even worth it. I don't really know because I don't use sunscreen, so it's been a long time since I've used a sunscreen, and so I don't really know if the higher SPF values are, if you have to pay more for that or not. But at any rate, it's more of a marketing thing than an actual protection thing. And then last but not least, okay, I give you a variety of ways in which you can naturally protect yourself from the sun. So that includes everything from using a physical mineral sunblock versus a chemical sunscreen, wearing lightweight protective clothing, especially clothing that is made from material treated with some kind of SPF, staying out of the sun during peak times, which are usually 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., using plant-based oils on your skin, like body oils or suntan oils made from jojoba, a coconut, olive. Also using some of these oils as your pre and post sun moisturizers, and you can add to that like rose hip seed, hemp seed, and then, I think I said olive already. All of those oils that are naturally rich, antioxidant rich, and then rich in vitamin E and vitamin C are protective of the skin and can actually help repair sun damage. And then, of course, staying hydrated and drinking plenty of water, and then avoiding applying citrus essential oils, lemon, grapefruit, orange, whatever, lime. Don't put those directly on your skin if you're going to go out and be in the sun, because they are phototoxic and some of them are phototoxic, and then that can actually increase your chance of getting sunburn. So I hope you found this beneficial. Let me know in the comments below if you learned something you didn't already know before, or what part of what I shared with you today was enlightening for you. Also, keep an eye out for details about my upcoming free training on June 21st. I am going to blow the lid off most of what you've been taught or told about nutrition, weight loss, and what you need to do to make sure you're really eating healthy. So until next time, thanks everybody. Bye.